Welcome to the Genealogy Gems podcast, providing quick and innovative ways to make the absolute most out of your research time and creative ideas for sharing and displaying your family history. I'm your host, Lisa Louise Cook. Hello and welcome to episode 89 of the Genealogy Gems podcast. I am just back from a whirlwind in Toronto where I spoke at the Ontario Genealogical Society conference. And I gotta say, what a great conference. It was first class all the way. And before I give you the scoop, I just want to say a big thank you to Paul Jones, Nancy Trimble, and all the folks out at the Ontario Genealogy Society for inviting me out there. It was simply superb. Paul and his team were so professional, so organized, and so much fun. What a fantastic group. I mean, it was really smooth sailing from the moment I arrived, and there were a lot of laughs and a ton of learning going on, and best of all, lots of opportunity to catch up with old friends and make some new ones. Now, I met several folks who I know have been listeners of the podcast practically since the beginning. I've seen their faces on Facebook and chatted here and there, but meeting Liz Thompson, Doug Shurton, Ian Haddon and his wonderful wife, Ellen Louise, and the Springsteens, it was terrific. This is one of the things I love most about speaking at conferences. We get to meet in person and swap stories and have meals together. Doesn't get much better than that. Oh, yes. And there was a lot of eating going on, a lot of shopping going on. Oh, and I found this fabulous book that I've been looking for. It is called Regina Before Yesterday, A Visual History, 1882 to 1945. It covers all the years when Bill's great-grandfather and grandfather lived in Regina. I can't wait to curl up with that volume and really get to know Regina better and kind of fit it into the family history. And I saw a lot of people doing oohing and eyeing at all the great stuff in the exhibit hall. And I also ran into Catherine Lake Hogan, who's been on the show before talking about Canadian border crossings. She's a genealogist out of Windsor, Ontario, and you would have thought we had called each other up ahead of time and coordinated our outfits for the first day because these two blondes meet up in the hall looking like the Bobbsey twins. We were dressed exactly alike, so I don't know what happened there. But I don't know, Catherine and I must be on the same wavelength a little bit. And at this conference, I was on my own. I'm one of those people who is fairly directionally challenged. I mean, you don't even have to spin me around a circle to have me totally mixed up about which direction I should be headed. But we had a packed weekend here at our house. Our youngest daughter, Hannah, was pitching in the College State Championship in Los Angeles on Friday and Saturday. And then our middle daughter, Lacey, was in a show at her university in Northern California on Sunday. So Bill drove about 900 miles all over the state of California, covering all of those events so that I could get out to Toronto, which I had booked months and months ago. But I made it everywhere I was supposed to be, thanks to a lot of nice people pointing me in the right direction, and I got home safe and sound, so it all worked out well. But of course, I was really bummed out that I was missing some of those big events here in California, so I was happy. I got a text on Friday night from Hannah saying that the game was going to be streamed live online on the college softball website here in California at 11 o'clock p.m. Toronto time, which of course was 8 p.m. West Coast time. And I was going to try and listen from the website, but it said I had to download QuickTime to my laptop. So I go to download it over the hotel's Wi-Fi, and this little window pops up and says, oh, it's just going to take about 9 hours to download. So needless to say, that didn't happen. So instead, I got some sleep that I really needed, but I was sorry to miss the chance to listen to the game. That would have been really cool. But it was good I got some sleep because I had to teach 3 classes the next day on Saturday. Genealogy Podcast 101, How to Save Your Research from Destruction, which is all about setting up a genealogical materials directive and a deeded gift. And finally, unleash your inner private eye to find living relatives. The audiences were terrific. We had a ton of fun. Well, here, you can hear for yourself. Your name is?
Diana Thompson. And you're here at OGS. Have you listened to podcasts before?
Yes, but just briefly. Had no idea about the sort of following it through, so I'm really intrigued by your presentation.
Yay, okay. And I'm curious to know, because one of the things we like to do on the podcast is we bring experts and conference-type information to the listeners, particularly those who can't get out to them. Which classes have you sat in on, and what are some of the gems that you've picked up on so far?
Well, the Jones series yesterday, brilliant. The use of graphs and organising a page to sort of sort out how to solve your problems, that will help me a lot, because I have repeatedly sort of gone and searched for the same document over and over. I mean, it's a disgrace. I've got bankers' boxes of material that I've yet to sort through, and this would solve that.
Fantastic. Yeah. Wonderful. You'll get our worksheet. Stay right here. What is your name?
Mario Lapointe.
Had you listened to podcasts before?
Yes.
Okay. And did you pick up on anything new? Do you do it through iTunes?
No.
Okay.
Just the website.
Okay, cool.
Very interesting, though.
Great. And what about in terms of, she was sharing some of the things that she's picked up on. What have you learned so far in the various classes you've attended?
Little tidbits, general interest.
Which ones, what was your favorite yesterday?
I liked the one about the effective researching. That was fun.
And those lucky participants from my Genealogy Podcast 101 class received a copy of my new DVD, Google Earth for Genealogy, as a thank you gift for volunteering to be on the show. So if you're ever in one of my classes, when I ask for volunteers, you got to come up because you get some goodies. And speaking of the DVD, I want to thank the amazing folks at Global Genealogy. They are a Canadian genealogy bookseller, and they carried my DVD in their exhibit hall all weekend. And I know that they sold out very quickly. So if you were at the conference or you live in Canada, don't fret, because you should be seeing Google Earth for Genealogy show up in the Global Genealogy catalog here very shortly. So stay tuned. I will let you know as soon as that happens. And of course, you can always get a copy from the Genealogy Gems website at genealogygems.com, or go directly to the DVD site at googleforgenealogy.com. And that's for the Google Earth for Genealogy DVD. I could go on and on about the OGS conference, but I really don't have to, because I have some great interviews that I did while I was there, which you can look forward to hearing on a future podcast. You're going to hear Tom Jones, the renowned genealogist, on the topic of researching common surnames. Now, I posted about this interview on Facebook, and I know that a lot of you have the same situation I do. I really want to make progress on my Moore line, and according to Tom's list, Moore is the 11th most common surname in the U.S., and I'm not surprised at all about that. But I felt very encouraged about my chances of getting a little further on my Moore family line after sitting in on his class and then talking to him one-on-one about it. And we are going to have Janice Nickerson on the show. All of us are so excited about having the TV show Who Do You Think You Are come to the United States from Britain, but Canada had also their own version, and Janice was instrumental in putting that together. And she's going to give us a behind the scenes of the Canadian version of Who Do You Think You Are? And then Dave Obey is going to be with us. He's the author of many books on research, particularly Canadian research, and we got a chance to go over the topic of beginning Canadian research. He's got a lot of great tips for anyone researching in Canada. So lots to look forward to in future episodes. So keep that podcast subscription downloading, because you're not going to want to miss it. But I have an interview for you today that is on a totally different subject, and I imagine it's one that you've never heard on any genealogy podcast, or any podcast for that matter. But first, let's catch up on what's new in the world of genealogy and talk about some of the latest records coming online, as well as a few new things going on around here at Genealogy Gems. Now, first off, Toolbar users got an alert this last week about this first record group we're going to talk about. The historical newspaper collection at footnote.com is free for the entire month of May 2010. You'll find newspapers ranging from small towns to major cities and dating all the way back to the 1700s. So for the month of May, 2010, all the historical newspapers on footnote.com are open to the public. You just need a free registration to view the images. And this is particularly good news for those of you premium members who attended or watched the recorded version of our recent Getting the Scoop on Newspapers webinar. You're going to have a chance to dig into a bunch of great newspapers for free. And of course, that webinar recording is still posted. It's part of the premium membership. So if you decide to join, that is going to be one of the free bonuses waiting there for you to watch at your convenience. I really love doing those webinars, and we are going to do more. So stay tuned, because I'm going to be telling you a little bit more about that as well. And I'll have a link in the show notes for this episode, which is number 89, that will get you to the footnote collection. And as always, I really, really appreciate it when you guys use the links on the website, because that's what makes it possible to keep this free podcast going. And it doesn't cost you anything extra to do that. You don't even have to buy anything there. So thank you so much for doing that. And speaking of newspapers, genealogybank.com has recently added 166 newspapers from 42 states here in the U.S., which, of course, could include obituaries, birth and marriage announcements, and a ton of other great information. So I will have a link to Genealogy Bank as well in the show notes. And if I have room, I'm going to list all of the new newspapers so that you can do a quick check and see if there's something there that you've been waiting for. Real quickly, I can tell you they've got papers from Alabama, Arkansas, California, Florida, Georgia, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Massachusetts, Maryland, Michigan, Missouri, Mississippi, Nebraska, North Carolina, New Jersey, New Mexico, lots of them from New Mexico, New York, several from Ohio, Oklahoma, yay, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Tennessee, several from Texas, Virginia, Wisconsin, and West Virginia. So all over the United States, if you are looking for newspapers, great resource. And I have several updates here at Genealogy Gems for you. And the first is about the Genealogy Gems iGoogle gadget. If you are an iGoogle user, you may have noticed that the gadget stopped updating the new episodes a couple of weeks ago. I think it got stuck like on episode 81. Well, I finally figured out that was because it was at the same time that the server where I host the audio files for the podcast, well, they upgraded the show to a new server, and that's why the old feed stopped updating. So here's a quick fix to your gadget to get it up and running again. First of all, just go in and delete the old gadget. If you look in the upper right-hand corner, I think if you click the little drop-down, pointing down arrow, deleting the gadget is one of the options. So get rid of the old one. And then in iGoogle, click the Add Stuff link. You find that in the upper right-hand corner of the page. And on the left-hand side of the next page, click Add Feed or Gadget. It's a small link, and it's partway down the page. And then type this feed into the box. The entire feed should read http://genealogygemspodcast.com/RSS. Again, we'll have that in the show notes for you so that you can just copy it and paste it right into the box. And then click the Add button. The updated gadget will be on your iGoogle page, and you should see the current episodes, and it looks like it's running perfectly now. So I will have, again, that podcast feed in the show notes for you so that you can just highlight it, copy and paste it, and that should take care of it. Now, if you haven't set up your iGoogle genealogy homepage yet, that's something that you can learn to do if you become a premium member, because I do have the 12-part series, the premium video series, that will show you how to set it up and pretty much turn Google, that big blank white website, into a genealogy homepage for you, which keeps you organized and makes doing research online not only easier, but a lot more fun. So those are great. I highly encourage you to set up your iGoogle page. Okay, our next update is about the Genealogy Gems app. This is the app for the iPhone and iTouch, and now the iPad. It allows you to stream the podcast and get all the kinds of bonus content. There's videos and images and stuff like that. Well, the app too has been acting kind of strangely lately, and sometimes it wouldn't load up at all. I checked into it, and sure enough, the podcast hosting service, who also developed the app, not only upgraded the show server, but then they released the new and improved update for the app. So that means that if you do have the app already, you'll need to download the new version, but it's free. And it's real quick and easy to do. Here's how you do it. Go into your iPhone or your iTouch and go into the Apps Store, which is a separate button, and click on Updates. You'll see updates there. Then click the app, the Genealogy Gems app, and download the free update. Once I found the App Store button, it was very quick and easy to do. And I got to tell you, the new app works like a charm, and it loads up much quicker. All this new technology is really cool, but it's all kind of being figured out as we go along. So I guess it's no wonder that there are going to be updates now and again. So check that periodically, because if you have other apps that you use, you may also find updates there as well for those. But I think that you're going to be really pleased with the new and improved Genealogy Gems app, and I will have a link in the show notes where you can get it in the iTunes store if you do have an iPhone, iTouch, or iPad. And finally, our last update is the new features on the Genealogy Gems toolbar. Now, as you know, the toolbar is a free download, and as I keep saying, it really is the easiest way to listen to the show. Plus, there's a lot of other really great genealogy goodies on that toolbar for you. Well, I just added another goodie, and that is the Google Earth button. Now, as you know, there are currently 7 Google Earth for Genealogy premium videos available as part of premium membership, which is great for those of you on the Mac, because we do have the DVD as well, but that is only on the PC. Well, sometimes you just want to do a real quick lookup in Google Earth, and it takes several seconds to launch the entire Google Earth program. Well, now you have a one-click access button to Google Earth on the toolbar. If you just look up it's on the kind of the right-hand end of the toolbar, and if you just click that button that says Google Earth, window's going to pop up with a fly to box, so you can just enter the address, the town, whatever it is you're looking for, and go right to it. I love this, and I hope that you find it really convenient too as well for those quick lookups in Google Earth. And also new on the toolbar is the YouTube button. Now, this used to be a little blue kind of TV set button, and you probably notice it's gone. And it's been replaced with a YouTube button. And this is because we wanted to give you an even faster way to access the Genealogy Gems videos. So when you click the YouTube button, a little widget window now pops up right there, and you'll have the videos from the Genealogy Gems YouTube channel without having to launch the entire YouTube site. You can scroll through the available videos by using the scroll bar on the right-hand side of the widget. And if you click the Get Widget button on the bottom of the window, you can add it to Facebook, Twitter, your blog, wherever you want to. So that is pretty fun. So as you can see, a lot has been going on, and I know that a lot has been going on with you as well. So let's hear about that in the mailbox. Okay, to kick us off, I have an email here from Bill Buchanan, who writes, "Hi Lisa, I'm listening to you as I write. My latest blog posting is about Genealogy Gems and includes your welcome video and a reference to the Transcript 2.3 software program. Check it out and keep up the great work." Well, Bill, I did check it out, and it's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing Genealogy Gems with your readers. I take that as a real compliment when you guys share the show with your friends and your fellow genealogists. That is way cool. And if you would like to check out Bill's blog, head on over to billbuchanan.blogspot.com. And gosh, that transcription program has really been popular lately. I had several folks at the conference this last weekend ask me about it. I love it, and I am so glad that you guys are all finding it really helpful as well. And our next email is from Brant Gibson, who's from my old stomping grounds in Washington State. Brant writes, "I've been listening to the Genealogy Gems podcast for the last couple of weeks. I'm up through episode 23 already." And was really impressed to hear about the microphone for the video iPod. I checked on your website for the link, but the site at Amazon it took me to said that the item was out. I tried Google searching and eBay searching, but I can't find anyone that still sells it. Do you know of any other way to get a hold of one of those microphones? Thanks, and keep up the fantastic work. Oh, thank you, Brant. You're right. That I just checked it as well, and the recorder that plugs into your iPod and allows you to create voice recordings that I mentioned, it was in the first season, I think, back in 2007, it's no longer available. But if you go to genealogygems.com and click the store button in the menu on the left-hand side and do a search for iPod recorder in the Amazon box that you find there on the page, that should take you to a list of results, and I see some new and even smaller attachments that can allow you to, again, turn that iPod and even your iPhone into a handheld voice recorder. So, good question. Thank you. Next, we have Darren Eng. I hope I'm saying that right, Darren. It's E-N-G-H. Who describes himself as the pure Norwegian. He posted the following on my profile on Facebook. He writes, I don't hear you talk about it much, but you mention using Apple products to access your podcasts. I just wanted to let you know what I use. Being you teach Google classes, you may want to mention Google's Android operating system. Has several third-party programs for podcasters. I use MediaFly to listen to your podcasts. 2 of your podcasts are listed on their site. The cool part about MediaFly is it shows your show notes and links while you listen. I look forward to taking your Google class. I use most Google products, and I'm always looking for ways to learn more. Keep up the great work. Well, that sounds great. Thank you so much, Darren. I'm actually in the market for a new phone. My kids think that mine is from the Stone Age because it's, 3 years old. But I've been looking at the Droid, so this is good to know. Thank you very much. Got to have those podcasts on there because I have a lot that I listen to as well. And Kathy Ott recently wrote in asking, can you give me a few suggestions for a beginner guide to genealogy? I am way beyond that time, and I'm sure lots of good books have been published on that topic that I don't know about. I'm looking for a retirement gift for a colleague at school, and I think I may have piqued her interest in the subject with all my own stories. I know she has some Russian roots, but I'm sure other lines will present themselves once she gets into it. Thanks for any suggestions that you can make. Well, Kathy, I do a lot of work with Family Tree Magazine, and frankly, that's because I really love the stuff that they do. And I really like their Beginner Genealogist Bundle. It's a fun combination of get-started tools that get the user up and running quickly. And that keeps them encouraged, right? Not quite as intimidating as getting one big, thick book. Now, if you want to spend a little bit less than the bundle, I would recommend they have the Beginner's Guide to Genealogy, and that's also by Family Tree Magazine. I'll have a link in the show notes that'll take you to their store, and then you just click the For Beginners in the left-hand column, or you could search the word beginner, and you'll find both of those items listed right there. And finally, I know a lot of you out there feel the same way I do, that it's fantastic when young people get involved in tracing their family history. And that's why I was so thrilled to get this next email from Elizabeth Root. She writes, Hi, I'm a 22-year-old graphic and product designer who recently became really interested in the Who Do You Think You Are TV series. It sparked off a whole new passion for me. I just signed up for your Genealogy Gems newsletter, and I've been listening to the Genealogy Gems and Family Tree podcasts. As a newbie, they have been an asset to my research with all your tips and help. Thank you so much. It's so exciting each time I discover a new ancestor to connect to my family tree or find a document giving me a little more insight or verification. It's absolutely amazing to see how not that long ago an ancestor came to America or how they were involved in a significant historical event. So thank you for all your recommendations, interviews, and for creating such a fun and informative podcast to listen to. That's nice. She says, I can't wait to show off what I found to my family. Well, thank you, Elizabeth, for writing in. I really appreciate your kind words, and I think it's fantastic that you're getting started in your 20s. Make sure you interview all those living relatives now while you can. It's a very, very common theme amongst genealogists to lament that we just didn't ask more questions when we had the chance when we were younger. So take full advantage of it and stay in touch. Let us know how you're doing. Would love to hear from you again. And thanks to all of you who wrote in. I love it. I love hearing from you. Okay, well, as I promised, I have a gem of an interview for you, and it's coming up right after this. Roots Magic 4 has been completely rewritten and is now even more powerful and makes building your family tree easier than ever. I love it. With Roots Magic, you can add unlimited facts, find anyone in your database with lightning speed with Roots Magic Explorer, quickly and easily create perfectly formatted sources with the Roots Magic Source Wizard, create customized reports, and best of all, you can now take Roots Magic wherever your research takes you with the Roots Magic to Go, which lets you run Roots Magic directly off your flash drive. And Roots Magic makes it a snap to share your family history, publish a book, create stunning wall charts, shareable CDs, even generate websites automatically from your data. To download your risk-free trial of Roots Magic 4, head to rootsmagic.com. See why professionals and beginners alike choose Roots Magic at rootsmagic.com. You are one of the lucky ones. You inherited your grandmother's diary or your great-great-grandfather's letters written during the Civil War. You've read them, entered pertinent data into your genealogy database, and if you are really on top of things, you transcribed them and even set up some search alerts for the various topics mentioned. Now they are carefully filed away. But have you squeezed everything out of them that you could that would give you a deeper understanding of who the writer was? In past episodes, we've ventured into handwriting analysis with professional graphologist Paula Sassy. But in this gem, we are looking beyond the handwriting and digging into the words, the phraseology, the sentence structure. We're about to enter the world of forensic linguistics. This approach first came to me as I was watching one of my favorite television shows called Forensic Files with my daughter Lacey. She's a budding anthropologist, and I just love a good detective story. Well, this isn't the first time that Forensic Files spawned a genealogical technique. As you may recall, way back in Genealogy Gems podcast episode 18, I shared with you how I watched detectives use an alternative light source in an episode of Forensic Files that triggered the idea of incorporating similar techniques with photographs, which led to the gem vehicular forensics in episode 18. I'll have a link to that episode in the show notes in case you missed it or you just want to brush up on it. Well, in this episode that Lacey and I were watching last year, I listened intently as Dr. Robert Leonard, Ph.D., a forensic linguist, described how he used his expertise to crack a murder case involving what were known as the stalker letters. My mind started to race. I have letters from ancestors. I wondered what Dr. Leonard could glean from those. I jotted his name down and I finished the episode. Well, over the last year, my mind occasionally returned to that episode and Dr. Leonard's description of the unique characteristics in language that can shed so much light on the writer or the speaker. I kept wondering, might an old document, letter, diary, etc., from an ancestor and the language used in that document provide clues for the genealogist? For instance, could forensic linguistics provide a lead as to where the person might have lived or been raised? Might it give insight to the education level or other aspects of their life or their personality? Well, in part 1 of Forensic Linguistics for the Genealogist, Robert A. Leonard, Ph.D., is here to explore the possibilities. He is professor of linguistics at Hofstra University, and his specialty is forensic linguistics as applied to U.S. law. He directs the linguistics program and the forensic linguistics internships. A Fulbright Fellow for his PhD research, he received his BA from Columbia College, where he was elected to Phi Beta Kappa and his MA and PhD from Columbia Graduate School, where he was a faculty fellow. He's currently lead researcher at his consulting firm, Robert Leonard Associates. Leonard's linguistic specialty of forensic linguistics applies the science of linguistic investigation to issues of the U.S. law. Forensic linguistics augments legal analysis by applying rigorous, scientifically accepted principles of analysis to legal evidence like contracts, confessions, and recorded speech. In the U.S. legal system, language is key. Through language, we create laws, issue subpoenas, warrants, question suspects, give testimony, write contracts, confess, claim, and deny. Attorneys use language to write briefs, make opening and closing arguments, question and cross-examine witnesses. Judges issue orders, write decisions, and charge juries. As biology and physics play crucial roles in the interpretation of forensic medical and ballistic data, linguistics enables a deeper understanding of forensic language phenomena. At Hofstra, the study of legal linguistics is centered at the Forensic Linguistics Project, which Dr. Leonard directs. Leonard has served as a consultant on language and intercultural matters to clients that include the New York Magazine, law firms, advertising agencies, television networks, and police and government agencies. In today's episode, we've got him here. We're going to spend some time learning about the cases that Dr. Leonard has been involved with and the role that forensic linguistics played. Now, while these aren't genealogical cases, listen closely because they illustrate the application of these techniques and they lay the groundwork for how you might be able to use some of these techniques in your own research. Here's part one of my conversation with Robert Leonard. Rob, thank you so much for joining me here on the show today. You know, I visited your website, which is at robertleonardassociates.com, and I love the subtitle, which is Applying the Scientific Principles of Language Analysis to Issues of the Law. And I know that's what you specialize in. It's really fascinating how forensic linguistics has been gaining importance in criminal cases. So I was hoping that you could tell us a little bit about that. When did forensic linguistics first start getting admitted into court?
Well, I think there's been the odd admission into court here and there for a great number of years, and forensic linguists like to point out fairly ancient cases where it was useful. But in terms of it being a commonly used, well, it still isn't common, but more commonly used, that began in the United States with my own partner, Roger Scheid, who was the distinguished research professor emeritus at Georgetown, and he left Washington D.C. and retired to Missoula, Montana, place.
Yeah.
And here I am in the New York area, and given the marvels of modern electronic communication, we merrily run a business together as if you were in the next room from me.
Ah, sort of like how I spend time with my genealogy researchers out there across the world.
Sure.
Yeah.
So he has written about 37 books, 8 of which have been on forensic linguistics. And his name is Shuy, S-H-U-Y, and he has his own website, rogerschheid.com, which has a very rich store of information about forensic linguistics. And Roger, was involved, I think he testified or consulted at least 250 times. He's testified in front of Congress, international criminal tribunals, you name it, and he's done it. I've worked pretty extensively with the FBI, but it was Roger who was asked to help the FBI develop a profile of the Unabomber, whom we later found out was Ted Kaczynski, back when the Unabomber was blowing people up and haranguing us with notes. And it was only Roger who accurately, based on the language of the notes, was able to say how educated he was, because he was quite educated, and that he had a certain age, so that the FBI, from other evidence, had thought that he was a much younger man and of much less education. And Roger accurately said, no, he's much older and he has very high education. And that proved to be the case. So that's the kind of profiling, linguistic profiling, that you can do. Just like the profilers with whom I've had the honor of working in the FBI get an idea about certain types of criminals based on their MOs, their modus operandi, based on extensive interviewing with serial killers and other criminals like that. They gain an idea as to what goes together with various features so that they can supply the other features. So that's what we do with language. If we see that a person uses a certain kind of construction, a certain kind of grammatical usage, certain kinds of vocabulary usage, we can deduce what the rest of their speech might be like and then say this person is a 50-year-old with a graduate degree and comes from the Midwest or whatever.
So are you sort of compiling, in a way, a database of how language ties into certain types of people, certain areas of the country? I'm imagining through your work, you just get all kinds of examples that build on themselves to, like you say, create that profile.
Yeah, that's a very good way of looking at it. Although we've been doing this not for forensic purposes for many years. Roger's colleague and my first linguistics teacher, actually, at Columbia, is a man named William Labov, who is currently a professor at the University of Pennsylvania. And he's one of the world's greatest experts on dialect and variation in language, that is, the different ways that people speak. And it was not for forensic purposes, but for scientific purposes, that he set out to see all the different dialects and the different usages of people all over the United States and elsewhere. And of course, prior to that, people had always been fascinated with dialects. For example, the Grimm brothers, who wrote the nursery rhymes, published the nursery stories. So a lot of those stories were collected through dialect work. They would write to the headmaster of the local village school in the various towns in Germany and ask them to tell them stories in the local dialect. Then they would extract from those stories dialect features. So in one place you'll say ich, another place you'll say ich, and that's how they would make their maps.
Wow.
Jacob Grimm was one of the greatest of what's called the neo-grammarians, and there is it's enshrined in Grimm's law, which is a theory of how language has sound changes. So that's just a long way of saying that linguists and philologists have for a long time been interested in the different ways we speak and the different geographic patterns. Labov added to it social class, occupational class, all sorts of other features that through which you could predict how someone was going to speak, because as we all know, if you speak to somebody for just 5 or 10 minutes, you're going to learn a lot about them, maybe subconsciously, just from the word choice, their accent, and everything else.
Oh, absolutely. Wow, it sounds like it's been around for quite a long time, longer than I would have even thought.
Right, not the application to forensics, which Roger and I have done a lot of.
Well, let's talk about that, because how I first became aware of your work was by watching one of my favorite television shows, which is Forensic Files. And tell my listeners about the Hummert case that you were involved with on that.
I received a call from the Pennsylvania State Police. They have a unit that investigates murders and major crimes, and they assist more local police departments. And they asked me if I could look at a series of writings and see what I could tell them about them. And what had happened was a woman had received stalker letters. Actually, her husband had received the letters, and the letters said, I'm back in town. I used to be around. your wife is of questionable moral character, although he didn't use that phrase. I had an affair with her. She ratted me out to my girlfriend. My girlfriend broke up with me and had an abortion, and now I'm back, and your wife's going to suffer.
Wow.
And this, as you can imagine, and you know from seeing that show, just threw everybody into a panic. The police were called, and then a couple other letters were received, and then the poor woman was found strangled to death in her automobile, left in a mall outside a supermarket. And then the police started an investigation. They developed a suspect list. And in the middle of this, the head detective, the chief detective, and the press received a letter from a different person who said that he had also been having an affair with this woman. He had killed her because she tried to break up with him, and that this was the fifth woman that he had killed. So, yeah. So they gave me all the letters, and they asked me if I could say anything about them. For the longest time, I could not. And another partner of mine, Professor Wald, who was my advisor at Columbia and later went to UCLA, he and I worked on this together, and we noticed that there was in both sets of letters, and I'll just call one the stalker letter, even though it was actually a couple of different types of letters, almost the same, and the serial killer letter, there was this odd turn of phrase, an odd rhetorical device that was not accidental, and it seemed to link the two. And they linked the two closely enough so that we could get a warrant and see if we could analyze those two letters, now that we thought that they might have been written by the same person, with the chief suspect's writings that were known to have been written by him. So we received a large number of his writings, and we compared them to the stalker letter and the serial killer letter, and we found just a stunning correspondence in terms of a couple of things, but most importantly and oddly was that in contraction patterns, and I'll explain that in a second.
And the chief suspect was the husband, if I recall correctly.
Yes, I'm afraid that's very true.
Wow.
It was. They assumed it was the husband at one point, and it would have made sense for him to have written this other letter too, trying to throw a suspicion off himself and onto a serial killer.
So you're comparing, now that you see something that's standing out in these two different types of letters, you're now going to his known writing and comparing the two.
That's right. And just so I'm trying not to overdo the details, it was actually a slightly different detail, or a very different detail, that we noticed that linked very strongly his writings and the two letters. And that was that when he did contractions, of all things. Contractions are, of course, when you say, I can't instead of I cannot, or I'm instead of I am. He sometimes contracted negative sentences, negative verbs. He might say can't, but he never contracted positive. If it was I am, it was I am. It was never I'm. And this was across the board in everything he wrote, and in the stalker letter and in the serial killer letter. And it was a very, very idiosyncratic feature, and we were able to give our opinions that very, very likely these were written by the same person.
Very interesting, because when you went into it, you really didn't know what you were looking for, but there's a wide range.
Yes, we had no idea at all. As a matter of fact, it took us over a month to notice this.
Wow.
Language is composed of so many different aspects. There's word choice, and also we look under the surface. We look at the underlying architecture of the sentences and the paragraphs that people write or speak. It's really quite amazingly complex.
I would think it would be very complex. It makes me think of the uniqueness of our fingerprints, something where I would imagine it's pretty difficult to hide yourself, because he probably didn't even realize he was doing that.
Yes, that's 100% true. And we had no idea that his contraction pattern was going to trip him up, and I'm certain that he never thought for a million years that the way he contracted verbs was going to wind up contributing to his receiving a life sentence without possibility of parole. Now, of course, it wasn't only on the linguistic evidence. There was other evidence, but it was there was a lot of other evidence, but of the same kind.
Very compelling evidence. Now, one of the things after I got in touch with you is you told me about and sent me a link to a video, which I'll share in the show notes for all of you listening, because it's fascinating. Tell us briefly about the Devil's Strip scenario that you worked on. And I want to talk about these before we get into how this might apply to genealogy research, because I thought it was really unique that the Devil's Strip situation was quite different than the one that I had seen about the Hummert case.
Yes, the Devil's Strip is a great example, and it's one of my partner Roger Shy's cases. The authorities came to him, and they had a ransom note scrawled in pencil, I think on a brown paper bag or something. And it said, if you ever want to see your precious daughter again, leave a certain amount of money in a diaper bag at the Devil's Strip at 5th and Main, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
No cops, come alone, or daughter is dead.
Wow. Now, if I read that, I wouldn't even know where he was referring to, because I've never heard that term before.
Well, it's interesting. I've shown this to a lot of people, this Devil's Strip. What happens is you don't notice it. You can read this 10 times and you won't notice it. Matter of fact, the smarter you are and the better reader you are, the less likely you are to notice the word Devil's Strip. And that is because reading is largely ignoring things that are not salient and important.
Oh.
Think about all the speed reading courses you've ever seen or taken or advertised. What do? You take your finger and you move it essentially down the middle of the page. What you're trying to do is just get the gist. You're trying to ignore. Sophisticated readers read in large gulps of words. Sometimes when I'm analyzing a document, I read it backwards, word by word.
It reminds me of that exercise where they ask you to count the F's and you completely skim over the ofs, O-F, and people always get that wrong because of the way they're reading, the way they're talking in their head, and you almost have to go, like you say, from the back to the forward, literally just looking at the letters to catch them.
But if you gave it to a 6-year-old who was just learning, she'd have no problem at all. Okay? So people don't normally notice this. They look for what they do understand. That's how if you or I read something and there's a word that we're not familiar with, we don't stop dead on that word. We pass it by on purpose, and we assume that we're going to get the gist, and maybe we'll even figure out what that word means from the context. So there were a couple of other very, very obvious things in this letter. For example, cops was spelled with a K. Daughter was misspelled. Other K sounds were, instead of being spelled with a C, as they normally would be, were spelled with a K. And there's all sorts of reasons that people might do this. They might speak a foreign language in which the K sound is always is always written as a K, or all sorts of reasons. But then it turns out that not all K sounds were written with K, and cops is a pretty odd word.
Yeah.
Now, a daughter was misspelled, but the word precious was spelled correctly.
Which isn't the easiest word, yeah.
Yes. Also, the punctuation was really well done. It was clearly somebody who was used to writing, but this is the kind of thing that you forget about. You, just like leaving your fingerprints, the person knew how to write a sentence. The person knew how to punctuate. The person forgot about that and concentrated on misspelling cops and daughter. So the first thing that Roger saw was that it was probably written by somebody who was trying to give bad information to mislead. So who would do that? Well, probably somebody who was well known in his or her community as an educated person.
I see. You know, it reminds me of like a staged crime scene where some things are done on purpose with the idea of throwing people off. Because I noticed that in the video. You said that you thought this person was educated, and I wondered what brought you to that conclusion.
Right.
Okay.
It was that we are the world's greatest repository of staged crime scenes, because whenever somebody writes a threatening letter, somewhere in there they realize, wait a minute, I don't want to write this in my normal language, or at least often they don't. So they try to hide something about their normal language. And it's very, very interesting what people are consciously aware of to manipulate. We look for things that they're unconsciously putting in there, that they do not have access to manipulate. So Roger, I like to think that Roger immediately said to the authorities, 10 seconds, I remember it took us over a month. He said, I know that he did it very quickly. He said, do you have on your suspect list a well-educated man from Akron, Ohio?
Oh.
Sure, they said. A well-educated man from Akron. Now, come on. Like Sherlock Holmes would say to the police, the person you're looking for, cane in his left hand and walks with a limp and did service in the Indian colonial service. So did he have a frayed sleeve on his left? Said, look, guys, just tell me, do you have a well-educated man from Akron on your suspect list? And they sure did.
Oh, amazing.
Right. And why was it Akron, Ohio? Because that is the only place where devil strip is used. Devil strip is that grass strip in between the sidewalk and the street. And it's a great indicator because most people either don't have a word for that strip, or they have a word that is almost never used, but they think that everybody uses.
Oh, my gosh.
And it's very interesting because, not that I didn't believe Roger, but I was giving an address to the Ohio State Attorney General's Conference on Law Enforcement a few years ago. 1,200 law enforcement agents from Ohio. And I gave this example. And a DA was standing behind these two officers, one from Akron and one from Columbus, which is very near Akron, of course. Mm-hmm. And the one from Akron turned to the one from Columbus and said, but wait a minute, everybody calls it that, don't they? And the guy from Columbus said, what, are you kidding? I've never heard it in my life. So this DA told me that with a great big smile.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, it's a very good example, isn't it?
So was that the bad guy?
Yes, it was. That's right. They went and they showed the evidence that Roger had sort of deconstructed from the note, and that was the man.
Dr. Leonard has some fascinating stories to tell, don't you think? Well, now that you have a feel for what he does, in our next episode, we will continue our conversation to learn how we might just be able to apply the science of forensic linguistics to our ancestors' words and writings. And he'll be addressing how these techniques might be able to help us identify our ancestors' places of origin.
You carry traces of every place you've ever lived in your speech. They might not surface all the time, but then at the oddest times they will.
He'll explain what we should be looking for.
Being educated people, we are trained to ignore that which doesn't make sense. Whereas now, we can find that which doesn't make sense could be the keys that we're looking for.
And he'll tell us how sound scientific principles might be used to solve family history mysteries.
The interesting thing always in science is not the single item, but it is the series of items, a wave of items, a pattern. That's why it's good to write these things down, because 1 or 2 or 10 by themselves may not tell the story, but then you put that 11 together and it's like a little jigsaw puzzle.
Stay tuned for part 2 of Forensic Linguistics for Genealogy with Dr. Robert Leonard. Well, that's it for episode 89 of the Genealogy Gems podcast. Thanks so much for taking time out today to listen in and share in the conversation. Keep an eye out at Family Tree University. I'll be over there. I'm just wrapping up the Google tools for genealogy class, and I'm going to be teaching reverse genealogy, which is really searching forward. So if you're interested in that, head over to Family Tree University. You can sign up and be a part of that class. And also remember, if you have purchased the Genealogy Gems iPhone app, make sure that you've downloaded the update. And, if you like it, I'd really love it if you would leave a positive review for the app in iTunes. Those reviews help kind of rise it higher in the search results, and that means it helps other people find the podcast and start listening to Genealogy Gems. And finally, a big shout out to Ian Haddon. I mentioned that I met Ian and his lovely wife, Ellen Louise, at the Ontario Genealogical Society. And I just noticed that he posted a wonderful write-up on the conference. And he was so generous and kind in his comments on our meeting and, of course, on the Genealogy Gems podcast. So check it out at his blog. It's Ian Haddon, Family History blogspot.com. And Ian, we are all really glad to know that you are feeling so much better and getting healthy. Good to hear it. Well, that's it from here. So thanks so much for listening, friend. I'll talk to you soon.